Oh my, are you finally awake? Good, good. Just in time, too. No, don't struggle. You'll find that won't work out well for you. I've made sure to make it so you have no choice but to sit tight and listen to what I'm about to say. So try to keep your eyes open and pay attention. I don't like repeating myself. Hello, Twisted Doctor. So, you came back. After everything. And you think trauma is a shield, a justification for what you did? I imagine you thought time would bury this, didn't you, Doctor? That silence would be mistaken for forgiveness. But when the bones speak, they do so with teeth. And right now, your past is gnawing its way into the present. Countless voices, 4 well-documented Google Docs. And each one paints a picture of a person who made children feel seen, just long enough to make them vulnerable. You didn't just cross a line. You made a home on the other side of it. Now then, shall we peel back the layers of rot you left behind? One by one, allegation by allegation. A fine little gallery of filth, wouldn't you agree? And once we've admired your handiwork, we'll get into your pitiful defense. We'll get to talk about exactly why it didn't do you any justice. Now, I suppose not everyone in the room knows your name, do they? A tragedy, really. You used to be someone, didn't you? Twisted Doctor, Sleepykinq, the animator with the sharp lines and sharper shadows. Creator of Doll Eye, a darling little horror RPG where the monsters wore masks, much like their maker. You built a world, an audience, a name that echoed in corners of the internet you thought would never turn on you. Young fans adored you, worshipped you even, and in return, you handed them poison with a smile. But the stage you built, well, it's crumbling now, isn't it? Because several voices rose from your past, each one echoing the same ugly truths. Starting with the first Google Doc, you've worn many names, haven't you? Twisted Doctor, Skrill, Bones, Jeremy, Terry. A little Rolodex of masks, each one smiling wider than the last. 21 at the time of this document, a game developer working on Doll Eye, still surrounded by the ruins of communities you corrupted. But let's rewind a little. Webb, you remember them. A moderator, a so-called friend. Someone who stood by you while you joked about vor and piss with minors. Then finally had the spine to say enough. They watched as your server's Mystery Stomach and later Doll Eye became playgrounds for your inappropriate fixations, all under the guise of humor. 13-year-olds were in those chats. 13. And you were 17 at first, then 18, then 19, an adult. Laughing along, leading the conversation, opening NSFW channels to a 13-plus community. You knew what you were doing. You made sure to keep it just ambiguous enough. Just a joke, right? But it wasn't funny, was it? Not to Webb. Not to the minors who idolized you. Not to anyone outside your little echo chamber of shame. Ah yes, and then there's Anon C. Once a dedicated supporter, someone who believed in what you created for years. But by July 2022, they stepped away, not because the art faded, but because the community around it changed, because it became a place where hurt lingered, where comments about fetishes, moments of insensitivity, even instances of racism and transphobia made some feel unwelcome. And you were at the center of that, Doctor. So tell me, how does it sit with you now, knowing that people who once looked up to you felt pushed away instead? Now, before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about that April night in 2018. You were 16, And the kid on the call? Only 13. 13 years old, doctor. Yet, when they joked, half in nervous laughter, asking you to draw them being bored by your character, Mystery Burns, you didn't just agree. You put a price on it. $20, you said. But the kid only had one to spare. You took that dollar, drew the image, and then, like a trophy, you posted it online, proud, celebrating. You turned a miner's joke into a permanent piece of your archive. And when the weight of that moment finally sank in, you wiped your Tumblr clean. But no amount of deleting can erase the memory saved in others' minds. Now, I will just say, as an old soul myself, sometimes children can be stupid. That also includes Twisted Doctor. That doesn't make what he did okay. I just think that's something to keep in mind. But let's move on. Then we have Alfred, owner of the Slimestory Burns on Tumblr, a beta tester for Doll Eye's first chapter, someone who once looked up to you, Doctor, hoping to be part of your circle, 13 to 14 years old, just a kid trying to fit in, idolizing you, but slowly realizing the group wasn't what it seemed. What started as harmless fun twisted into something darker. You played favorites, made it clear who was in and who wasn't. Alfred wasn't the favorite, so he pushed himself harder, drawing questionable art just to stay relevant. And that self-loathing, it grew, fueled by the environment you created. The jokes came next, not the funny kind, but the kind that crosses lines and stays there. You let your characters, your voice, slip, dropping racial slurs under the excuse of shock humor. Alfred was the one who had to pull you aside to tell you it wasn't okay. You stopped, for a moment, but then you tried again, making outright racist jokes, feigning ignorance, even though you did know better. Friends of color were there, right in your circle, and still, you chose to mock, to dismiss. Remember this one, as we'll get back to it later. There was also a lot of talk about NSFW content. Doctor not only participated in it, but encouraged others to do the same. He created and shared explicit artwork, openly, which gave the impression that this behavior was acceptable. At the time, Alfred thought it was okay to follow his example. Looking back now, they deeply regret those actions. They were still very young and didn't fully understand the consequences. This is an example of how Doctor's influence impacted not just himself, but those around him, especially younger people who looked up to him. Anon B was also part of Skrill's old Discord circles. A fan, a member of the Triple Threats group, active in the Mystery Stomach and official Doll Eye servers between 2017 and 2019. Like many others, they have experienced troubling behavior from Skrill firsthand. Though Anon B prefers to keep their personal experiences private for safety reasons, they have contributed what they can to confirm the overall pattern of misconduct. Despite the loss of many screenshots and messages over time, their voice remains an important part of this conversation. A reminder that these issues affected real people. So, Twisted Doctor, that's just the opening act. A chorus of voices you can't simply brush off. Each one a thread unraveling the carefully crafted image you tried to sell. Boundaries crossed, jokes that weren't funny, influence that did real damage. And don't think for a second this is the whole story. Oh no, darling. We're only just getting started. I think that about covers it for the Google Docs. I should remind you all again, all of this is alleged. It's up to you to make up your mind if you want to believe what's been written or not. You be the judge and draw your own conclusions. However, Now that we have the Google Docs out of the way, I wanted to now look at his response videos. He responded not once, but twice. His first video he took down received a massive amount of backlash, hence why he took it down. No one was happy with his response to the accusations, and let me explain why.
Disclaimer: this video contains heavy topics, such as fictional sexual assault, racism, fictional paraphilias, kinks/fetishes, and grooming. No names or specific individuals are mentioned in this video to protect and respect their privacy. I will not redistribute pictures or screenshots of various callouts, as they contain contents and messages not suitable to young or impressionable viewers. I'm going to address the broader damage instead of specific incidents, as they're all similar in nature. But if you're curious about the extent of my actions, they're pretty easy to find online. I am not a healthy person to interact with. I got caught in the cycle of abuse and hurt and traumatized a lot of people, many of them younger than me, both through public exposure and private experiences. Throughout all this, I have apologized many times, because truthfully I never intended to hurt anybody. But intent doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Hurt was still caused.
There isn't much that can be added here if I'm being completely and totally honest with you. You, Twisted Doctor, filled in the blanks on your own. You admitted to nearly everything, only pausing to give your reasons as to why you believe you did any of this. I will give credit where credit is due, that you admitted it wasn't an excuse, that you planned to get help and get a job, and stop interacting with the online space. However, was it really necessary to give a lengthy explanation for any of this? People don't really care about why you feel you did this. They don't care about how you've been traumatized as a child and therefore continued this cycle of abuse, as you put it.
Sexually inappropriate. Why? I was a neglected and troubled child with a home that was sexually abusive. In conclusion, I myself am a CSA victim as well. Even so, it doesn't excuse all the trauma I perpetuated and carried out from my childhood into others. I have always found a fascination for dark fictional topics, because I will see my own suffering reflected in it. And the more I learned, the worse the topics will get. By the time I was 13, I grew a fascination with even darker fiction, such as fictional sexual assault, fictional incest, fictional necrophilia, the list goes on.
They only care that you did it, and they want to hold you accountable. And the fact that you claim that you would stick around to continue posting art and working on your game only enraged people further. After admitting that everything was undoubtedly true, how else did you expect people to react? This hurts your image, and your game as well. It's noble of you to admit to your wrongdoings, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. Ah yes, but I can't forget. You did make a second video. Taking this response down, you decided to make a shorter upload. You admitted to deflecting right off the bat, and repeated that you acknowledged that you did indeed do all of what you were accused of. Well, you also add something about your ex-boyfriend. I find it unnecessary, but oh well. You made your bed with nails, and it's time to lay in it. My final thoughts might surprise you, but I have some mixed feelings. I do think that a minor, even though an older minor is still a minor, they shouldn't do things that are inappropriate to people who are much younger than them. That's still wrong to do. In all honesty, I don't even think that minors who are the same age should be doing inappropriate things with other minors of the same age. They aren't old enough to understand the implications. However, we must acknowledge they are still a child and will make stupid mistakes, especially when left alone on the internet. It's why I think parents need to learn better parenting skills if they plan to raise a child. Know what your child is doing so they don't get into trouble like this. Twisted Doctor is a perfect example of someone who probably wasn't taught about these things. It doesn't excuse anything, it's just some food for thought. Going into adulthood, though, that's starting to go into dangerous territory. It's especially damning to see that people from his community were urging him to stop his bad behavior, but he still kept going. No one is really required to babysit another person who they only know from online, and as an adult, the consequences of his actions fall solely on his shoulders. He left in a plug for commissions at the end of his second video, claiming he won't have any income otherwise. And while that's sad and all, the most he could do, and probably should do, is look for work. There are plenty of places that hire quickly, and will keep him afloat while he works on himself. Asking the community you wronged is probably the worst way to go about this. Find a temporary job. Anything will do. It might not be your dream job, but it will pay the bills. Going offline totally and not posting any art for at least a while would be the next best course of action. Call it tough love if you will, but I don't think people should give him any money out of pity. I think he should be forced to find work and get offline while he takes time to reflect and better himself. Any sort of online presence, support, or sympathy may just make him fall back into old habits. The last thing we want to do as a community is enable this kind of behavior. This is the end of the Twisted Doctor drama. To Doctor, I'm not a hater. Perhaps I seem quite the scary woman, but I'm not at all someone who holds long-term grudges. I would love to see you genuinely improve yourself, but you must show that improvement through your actions, not your words. Hopefully things only improve from here. Perhaps Twisted Doctor will have to leave this community altogether and find something to do elsewhere after he first improves. Who knows? Only time will tell. With that, I thank you all for joining me here tonight. Take care, darlings.